Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Denise McKelvey, and I am the moderator for this evening's candidate debate. Before we begin, please silence all phones and electronics devices. Additionally, please refrain from any interruptions to the debate, as it is being recorded on demand viewing and post-captioning services. Joining this evening is Mr. Tom Collins with the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform and public education measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. The Clean Elections Act was created to allow campaigns to be more issue-oriented and less negative. The system provides full funding for qualified candidates who participate voluntarily. The candidates agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules, which include contribution and spending limits, foregoing special interest money, as well as participating in commission debates. The candidates invited to participate tonight are in contested general elections. Candidates in uncontested general elections are not included in the debate process. For tonight's debate, questions have been prepared by Clean Elections based on a voter survey, as well as questions that have been submitted by voters through the Clean Elections smartphone app. However, we encourage live audience questions first. If you have questions, please print them clearly on the note cards given to you when you entered and hold them up. Our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. If you need additional cards, just raise your hand and we'll come and collect them. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate tonight is scheduled for an hour and a half. So we may not get to all the audience questions, but we will do our best. There is an independent timer who will see that all candidates have their allotted time to answer questions and will tell them when their time is up. As a courtesy to the other candidates, please respect the time limits. When the timer raises the stop sign, the moderator will stop the candidate. Tonight's debate includes 1 minute each for the opening statements. Then we'll have a lightning round, a quick lightning round. Then the first half of the debate will begin with 2 minutes each to answer audience questions. Each candidate will answer the same audience question, and we will rotate which candidate responds first. After all candidates have responded to the question, the first responding candidate will be given an additional 30 seconds. The second half of the debate will allow a different question per candidate with 1 minute to answer. If you have questions for a specific candidate, please include the candidate's name on the note card. It will be considered during the second half. We'll then finish up the debate with 1 minute closing statements each. Again, we ask that you remain polite to all the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you agree or disagree with anything being said. Tonight for Legislative District 28, all the candidates are traditional candidates. By introduction, Ms. Kate Brophy McGee, Republican, running for a seat in the Senate. Mr. Eric Meyer, Democrat, running for a seat in the Senate. Ms. Kelli Butler, Democrat, running for House of Representatives. Ms. Mary Hamway, Republican, running for a seat in the House. And Ms. Maria Syms, Republican, running for a seat in the House. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate. That'll start for the opening comments, and we'll progress from that starting point. The order for the second half will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name, starting with the House. We'll now begin our opening remarks. Ms. Brophy McGee, will you start, please?
Thank you all for coming this evening. I'm running for the Arizona Senate to build an Arizona our children and our grandchildren will call home. That means growing our economy, creating high-quality jobs, and having a world-class K-12 and university system. I believe we define who we are as a state by how we treat the most vulnerable among us. I have deep roots in LD28. My family has lived in our North Central Sunny Slope neighborhood for 32 years. I have a record of public service that began long before I was elected to the legislature, service I carry on to this day. A decade on the Washington Elementary School Board, 6 years on the Arizona School Facilities Board, neighborhood leader, HOA president, and team mom for the Sunny Slope High School wrestling team. I've made a big difference in the legislature with my experience in problem identification, my effectiveness in providing practical, not partisan solutions, improve our state and our people.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Eric Meyer, and I never thought I would be a politician, but I took my kids to school and saw the needs in our classrooms here in Arizona. And I realized, I put my medical practice on hold, and I realized there was incredible need and wanted to do something about it. So I ran for the Scottsdale School Board and served there for 8 years, and then I ran for the legislature. Unfortunately, our state has gone on the wrong path. We rank 49th in per pupil funding. We spend $4,000 less per student than the national average, and we've increased university tuition by over 80%. I have a different vision for our state, and I would like to take us on that path. I would like every student to get a quality public education, be able to go to college and get a degree, and then go into the workforce and get a job right here in Arizona. And if you vote for me on November 8th, I promise that I'll go down to the Capitol and fight for those values.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Kelli Butler.
Hi, I'm Kelli Butler. Thank you to the Clean Elections Commission for having us, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm a native Arizonan. I grew up in our state, and I love it here. I grew up here when we were about average in the nation in per pupil funding, and we know that that's a very different story now. I went to Cocopon Chaparral within the district, within District 28. I went to U of A. I studied elementary education. I met my husband, Ben, in college, and we've been married for 27 years. Ben went to dental school at UC San Francisco, and I worked to put him through school. We came back to Arizona because this is our home, and we've raised our 2 boys. One is 23 and serving in the Navy. One is 21 and a senior at NAU. And I got involved in politics, which is something I never imagined doing, but I did it because I'm a mom and I saw what was happening to my kids' schools, and I know that we can do better, and I want to make sure that all of our kids have the opportunity that I had when I grew up, and that, that I was able to help in my kids' schools, help other students to achieve, and I want to help the whole state.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway.
Yes, thank you very much for being here this evening, and thank you to the Clean Elections Commission. My name is Mary Hamway, and I'm running for the Arizona House. I, too, never really pictured myself in politics. I call myself an accidental politician. I've actually had 3 careers. I started out after college in information technology and worked for, I'm very proud of my role in the America's space program. I was a programmer on the space shuttle. And then I took time off and raised my son and got involved. I was a PTO president, HOA president, and then I ran for the town council in Paradise Valley, and I've served there for 10 years. So again, I appreciate you being here tonight. I am ready to roll up my sleeves. I have a long track record of finding solutions to complicated problems, and I can promise you that I will work hard for you, and we will find ways to put more dollars in the classroom, and I hope to have your vote on November the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Syms.
Thank you. I'm Maria Syms, and thank you everyone for being here tonight to hear our plan for the future of Arizona. I'm running for 2 reasons. I'm asked all the time, we're running a grassroots campaign, why are you running? Well, the first reason involves my vision for Arizona. I believe that Arizona is positioned to be a leader in the nation in job growth, economic prosperity, and quality education for all our children. And I have a 25-year career in private and public service that I think will enable me to be a strong advocate for those those visions for Arizona. And the second reason is because this country has given my family so much. My father was an immigrant from Italy. He came to this country with nothing but a belief in the opportunity in America. Many people feel that opportunity is out of reach, and I want to reignite that for people. I have 3 children who attend, 2 of them attend public schools right now in LD28, and I couldn't be more vested than putting my most precious resource in our public schools, and I believe quality education is the key to the future of Arizona. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. To break the ice, we're going to start a quick lightning round. Please answer with just one word. Mr. Meyer, Pandora or Spotify?
Neither.
Ms. Butler, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
CNN.
Ms. Hamway, Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Ms. Syms, Lumberjack, Sun Devil, or Wildcat?
All of them.
Ms. Brophy McGee, Snapchat or Instagram?
It's got to be Snapchat.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the portion of the debate where the candidates will answer the same question. The first question is for Ms. Butler. According to DES, over 20,000 adults and over 11,000 kids in LD28 live in poverty. What is the role of government in helping lift these families out of poverty?
Well, thank you. You know, the first role of government is to provide an education so that these kids can have the opportunity to succeed and to have the training that they need to get good jobs and not live in poverty. We are not doing that in our state when we are 49th, and I intend to do everything I can to change that. And the other role of the government is to provide a reasonable social safety net. We can't have people living in utter dire straits in our wonderful country. I will not accept that for people in our state. And so, you know, in our state, we have cut so much of our social safety net, and we're seeing it reflected in those numbers that are far too large. You know, we have cut TANF benefits, which are emergency assistance to families that are the poorest families so that they can buy diapers and food, and we are the only state that only provides 1 year of those benefits. The only state. Surely we can do better than that for families that are desperate. You know, we've cut child care subsidies so that we see children living in dire situations and in not receiving quality health care or quality child care. They're being, you know, we're seeing more neglect in these situations because parents are having to leave their children at home because they can't afford child care. And all of those things are reflected in their numbers. So there is an opportunity for the government to provide reasonable services and especially education so that these kids won't be living in poverty and they can do better.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway.
Same question?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kelly did a great job of answering that. I think we do have an obligation to provide for, the government has a responsibility for the safety net. You know, I have a degree in criminal justice and social rehabilitation, and so I learned early on in my career that community services are important, and certainly we have a lot of private organizations that provide services, but, you know, all-day kindergarten would be a great start, you know, to provide kids with that early learning and early childhood learning. And certainly the safety net, as Kelly talked about, is very important. You know, we've put a lot of money and we've put a lot of time into the Department of Child Services, and we have a lot of work to do. And as far as, you know, poverty, education is absolutely critical. You know, everyone needs a good education and choice. One of the things that Arizona is so far ahead of any other states is in its ability to have choices for education. And so we do have to, you know, ensure that more dollars go to the classroom, that all schools have offer quality education, and then the services, you know, just helping people, you know, pick themselves up, and job training, you know, JTED training is absolutely critical. Not everybody is college bound. I mean, there's many services and there's many things that go into poverty, and certainly, you know, working towards, you know, education, restoring some of those community services, and then working with, social services to provide the families with the things that they need.
Thank you. Ms. Syms.
Thank you. Certainly, giving people an opportunity, that's been a theme of my campaign, is an aspirational goal for our state. And there is a role of government in helping people to achieve those opportunities. Education is one of the key aspects of that. As a former preschool board member and a board member of Early Childhood Development Group in North Central, I understand the importance of starting this in the very beginning and making sure that we're setting our families on the right track for success. One of the things that I would add that some of my colleagues didn't have time to mention is that I believe that job creation, job growth, economic drivers to create the revenue to be able to provide those programs is key. We provide a lot of services in Paradise Valley, and the key is that we have resorts, and they are the economic drivers to provide those services. So I think that we have to have good policies at the state level to ensure that we have the revenue to generate those opportunities so that we have job growth, that we have quality public education. I would like to see more all-day kindergarten and have better third grade reading literacy in our state, because these are measures that we know are essential to future success. So those are some of the things that I would work on in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee.
Thank you. I do a lot of work in this field with the disadvantaged populations that are within the state. I believe that the role of government and the policies government should adopt would be to give these individuals a hand up as opposed to a hand out, and our policies should be built around shaping exactly those types of opportunities. In this past session, I worked to build up the many excellent quality nonprofit organizations that are providing assistance to these families, and worked very hard to increase the tax credit donations to these organizations so that they could better do their work. I sponsored the legislation, and we passed legislation establishing the Department of Child Safety as a standalone agency, reporting directly, with the agency head reporting directly to the governor. In addition, I passed a number of transparency measures for that to ensure that children are safe. I led the charge this past session to bring back kids care. We were the last state in the union to get kids care. It was dead. My friend Heather Carter and I figured out a way to do it and got it done. Thank you, Adam Driggs. I voted for and worked to pass Prop 123, and am focused very much on Step 4, 5, 6. I am also focused on helping disconnected youth, that is youth between the ages of 16 and 24, who have dropped out of school and have dropped out of life. Those are problems we need to address immediately so that they can become self-supporting adults with a future ahead of them and spare the burden of the socioeconomic and the tax burdens to the taxpayers of Arizona. Lastly, there has got to be a way to get child care assistance back in this state to assist and support working families.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. So for the 8 years I've been down there, we've always developed a budget in our caucus, and that budget has reflected our values. And that budget has always included things like kids care. Kids care was eliminated. When I was there, I voted no. We fought to restore that each year. I know my opponent claims that she led the charge to bring it back, but 2 nights before we voted on a Democratic bill that had kids care attached to it, she walked out on the vote and wasn't there to vote for it. She also wasn't there to vote for TANF, which we talked about, which feeds the neediest kids in our state. We're the only state in the country that only provides 1 year of food to kids, and that's just wrong. When it comes to education, we have choices when we make that budget. And every year, and I've been called a complainer by my opponent for this, but every year I make the same arguments that some of the candidates here have made about funding full-day kindergarten, about increasing funding for our school. And the budgets that we create stay balanced, don't raise taxes, they just spend money differently. So we as voters have a historic choice that we can make in this election cycle, because we can change the Senate. If I'm elected and one other Democrat's elected, we can take the state on a different path and fund our schools and make sure our kids have services like Kids Care. It would have never been cut, should have never been cut in the first place. As an emergency medicine physician, I couldn't believe that we cut that. So it takes the work of many to get things done, and I believe that if I'm elected to the Senate, I will represent our district well and represent the values of our district.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, your 30-second response.
Thank you. Wonderful to hear so many good ideas coming from everyone up here. And, you know, health care for children, kids care, great idea. All-day kindergarten, child care subsidies, these are all ideas that we need to explore, and we need to elect people who are going to do the work to make those things happen. We have a majority party that has not taken the opportunity and has not done those things. It's easy to talk about, we all want those things to happen, but we need to elect people that are going to make it happen, those are the priorities that I'm going down there with, and we need to make sure that we achieve those.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question, we'll start with Ms. Hamway. In light of recent attention to nationwide systems of harsh and heavy court fines and the need for fairer punishment for petty offenses, what policies and legislation would you propose, support, and/or sponsor to change this aspect of Arizona's criminal justice system?
Well, that's a tough question, and let me get my thoughts together for a minute. You know, I think that overall we do have a we do put a lot of people in prison and in jails that for crimes that maybe should be reevaluated. And I'm not a lawyer, and I've never really practiced in this field, but I would work to find ideas to help people not be in jail all the time. For example, in our county jails and correctional systems, they are using a lot more monitoring, home monitoring, so leg braces and those different things. And those are allowing people to live productive lives but still be monitored and still have the court keep up with where they are. So that would be one thing that I would work on. And then I think that there is room for reform for what the criminal punishment for some of these crimes are. And there's lots of ideas out there. Certainly, reducing the penalties for nonviolent crimes is one way to do it. And you know, honestly, I would just talk to some experts. This is not an area that I have really ever spent any time working on, so it would be an area that I would need to learn more about. And I would start by talking with experts in this area, and that's where I would start. So I'm not an expert in criminal punishment by any means. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Syms.
Thank you. Complicated question. Thank you for that question. I think that the question reflects a misunderstanding of our criminal justice system. As a former Assistant United States Attorney and a former Assistant Attorney General Legal Policy Advisor to Attorney General Brnovich, I've heard a lot of these arguments about sentencing reform, and I think we have to think back in our history about sentencing, and when we saw crime going down was when in the 80s when we started having tougher sentencing laws. There's a misunderstanding that people are thrown in jail for minor offenses. That is not the case. You talk to our county attorney, you will see that it takes 3 or 4 times repeat offenders. I wish the focus of the conversation was as much concerned about the victims of these crimes as it is about the perpetrators of these crimes. I will say one area where I believe that we do need to look at as a state, and that's the recidivism rates. And I think the experts involved in the conversation are in agreement that we do need to be doing more on the remediation end after the sentences are served.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee.
Thank you. First of all, a government that relies on these types of fees to run, and they perpetuate them and they grow them. So that's the first problem. We need to go in a different direction in terms of our correction system as a whole. Our population of prisoners as opposed to the general population has exploded and increased exponentially. I serve on the governor's substance abuse task force. I was named to the task force because of my interest in helping babies and families where the babies are born substance exposed. But we are looking at all aspects of substance abuse, and many of our inmates are suffering from substance abuse and mental health issues. And we have poor to non-existent, in my opinion, transition programs. So when they go out into, and they finish their sentence and they go out into the world, they immediately recycle and come back. We did some work on transition programs in this past budget. Much more needs to be done. The entire Department of Corrections needs to be put under a spotlight, transparency, and we really need to take a look at how the Department of Corrections is being run.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. So Arizona has one of the highest prison populations per capita in the country. I introduced a bill this year that would have looked at sentencing reform, drug and alcohol treatment, like other states, like red states, like Texas, Florida, and Utah did. Utah created a commission, and my bill would have done the same thing, to create a commission to look at how to do reforms and reduce our prison population. We have a perverse incentive, which I think is unethical, by having private prisons and locking people up for money. I am advocating and have advocated for getting rid of our private prison system. Part of the budget that was voted for this year will automatically build private prison beds here in our state. I did not support that. My opponent did. And just to put things into perspective, we used to spend $1.1 billion on our universities and just $600 million on our prisons. Now those numbers have flipped. We spend $1.1 billion on our prisons and just $600 million on our universities. And I think that demonstrates that our priorities and the direction we're being taken is the wrong way to go. Those things that need to be addressed, and just back to the issue of prisons and recidivism. You know, in those states where they've made these reforms, public safety's improved because they actually put programs in place that keep people from going back to prison. Our recidivism rate's over 50% here. Our prison system is broken and definitely needs reform. And we're spending a significant amount of money every year. That contract that will be signed for those private prisons will cost us as taxpayers $500 million over the next 20 years. And I'd rather educate than incarcerate. We spend a fraction per student in our state compared to what we spend per inmate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Butler.
Yes, obviously, public safety is extremely important to all of us and an incredibly important function of government. We definitely need to get a handle on our criminal justice system and this spending, and the way to do it is criminal justice, is reform. And we need to look at states, as Eric said. There are ways to create safe means to reform our criminal justice system, and we need to explore all of those. I am very concerned about the fact that Phoenix has the highest percentage of disengaged youth, 16 to 24-year-olds that are neither in school nor working. And what are those kids doing? You know, we can imagine a lot of them are probably committing crimes, and that is absolutely tied to education again. You know, we've cut 100% of funding for community colleges, which is, you know, affordable and accessible way for kids to get more education. We've cut so much from our universities that tuition is spiraling out of the reach of so many families. So we're leaving our kids with no other options. And the real solution is to create the opportunity for kids through education. But also so much concern about private prisons. You know, we in 2012 passed a law that said that we don't evaluate private prisons anymore, and we don't compare them to our state prisons. And it's very strange that we would do that, and we would not be holding private prisons accountable and making sure that we know how they're using our tax dollars and making sure that they are effective and safe. And I have no reason to think they are, and in fact, I think they are not. So we need to reform and begin to get rid of private prisons the way the Department of Justice has decided to do as well.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, your 30-second response.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as Ms. Butler referred to, the federal government is looking to get rid of all private prisons. And, the three things they're looking for is the cost, the services provided, and whether or not they're safe. And I agree, and I have stated in other forums that some legislation that I would sponsor would be to put back the audit, to put back the ability to analyze our state prisons and against private prisons, and to make sure that they are cost effective.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with Ms. Syms. What is your plan regarding immigration reform in Arizona?
Thank you. We can't talk about immigration reform without talking about border security. We need to have a secure border. As an assistant attorney general, I worked on these issues, the problems associated with a porous border, and also as an assistant United States attorney. The drug problem, the human trafficking, the danger to our communities and our families. Enough is enough. We need to make sure that we have a secure border before we can start talking about the immigration reform component. We are a nation of laws. If we don't enforce our laws, who are we? What are we? We need to enforce our border, secure our border. I've been down to the border. I've been down there. I've met with the sheriffs down there. I've seen the drug trafficking that's going on, the drug interdiction, the real threat to our communities and our families. These drug cartels come through and they take a blowtorch and they cut open the metal fence and drive their trucks through and use the ranch lands to reach the highways to bring their drug loads through, or the people that they're bringing through. And until you've stood there and held the hand of a rancher who told the story of her husband being shot on their own land by these members of these drug cartels, these drug mules, I don't think you can appreciate the danger associated with a porous border, and I think that's where our efforts really need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee.
Thank you. Immigration reform is a federal issue. It is done at the federal level. At the state level, our obligation is to ensure our citizens' safety, particularly along our porous southern border. We have ranchers, you have people who live along the border. I have family down there, and it's not the same as when I grew up in Bisbee. It's a lot less safe. So this past session, I supported the governor's border strike force to get more resources to the border, to the county sheriffs, to the local police, so that they could deploy as needed to protect against the dangerous elements who are coming in. The reforms themselves must come from the federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. I agree. It's a federal issue. We have passed local laws, and I supported those and voted for them, that were tough on human traffickers and drug smugglers, and increase their sentences and keep them in jail and off our streets, which is what we can do. What we can't do are pass bills that drive our largest trading partner away from Arizona. Some of the nonsensical bills that we pass at the Capitol that are unconstitutional. And so I would hope that we don't do that anymore, because our trading partner is going around us. We need to invest in infrastructure that allows Mexico to trade with us and doesn't deter our business relationship with them. We also have the agricultural industry here. It's a $17 billion industry. And we need a plan that allows workers to come into our country and our state and work here and return home. It's just a short story, but my wife and I were in New Guinea practicing medicine, and when our visas expired, someone knocked on our door and told us to leave the country. Why we can't keep track of people here in America is beyond me. But nonetheless, the governor's border strike force was not supported by the county sheriffs because they need the money. They would rather have used that money themselves to increase enforcement along the border. And when we sweep money as the state legislature from our cities and towns and from our counties to use it to balance our budget and pass that burden along to our cities and towns and counties, well, it makes it hard for them to hire law enforcement officers. So we should stop the sweeps. We should let the cities and towns and counties do their job and enforce the border. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butler.
Thank you. Well, immigration is such a political football, and everyone has their opinion on it, and it gets very emotional for people. But what I think we need is first of all, we need to acknowledge that this is a federal issue. The federal government needs to pass comprehensive reform that makes sense for all of our states. We can't have states, obviously, creating their own ideas about what we need to do because it just doesn't work that way. So we absolutely need to secure our border. We need to encourage all of the resources the high-tech resources that we can. We need to fund those opportunities to make sure that we know who's here. We need to make sure that criminals can't get through our border. That's of paramount importance. But we also need to acknowledge the need for work done by immigrant labor, and we need to keep track of who those people are. And as Dr. Meyer said, I don't understand why we can't have a program where people can come here and work and then return to receive health care or be with their family, and then their families don't have to come here with them. It doesn't make sense to me that we are so divided on this issue when we need to have a better relationship. We are in a unique position as a border state. We should be leveraging our position as a border state. We should be welcoming the opportunity to bring in raw materials. We should be using this as an opportunity to take our products across the border. So I think we just need to more calmly talk about this issue and find solutions that are going to work and keep us safe at the same time as we acknowledge our need to have good relationships with our neighbor to the south.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway.
Yes, thank you. It is a federal issue, but it affects each state that borders with Mexico uniquely. And I'm a native Texan, so I've been involved in the guest worker program in Texas for a number of years. I knew many cotton farmers, and they depended on the immigrant workers to come over and bring the fields in. So a guest worker program has been part of our culture and part of our history for years and years and years. But it is time to secure the border. It is, I agree with Dr. Meyer. I don't know why we can't keep track of people, and when the visas expire, why we can't send them back home. I'm a strong advocate for technology. You can't physically put a fence all along the border. Certainly in Texas, you've got 2,000 miles of the Rio Grande. You can't put a fence in the middle of the river. And certainly along the Arizona border, there are very remote areas of the Chiricahua Mountains and different areas where a fence just doesn't work. So I do believe that technology, drones, could play a huge role in that. We've spent a tremendous amount of money down in Mariposa in Nogales to improve the border, the ports of entry, and that's huge, because one of the things we need to do is encourage good trade with Mexico and be able to secure the people, or not secure, but know who's coming into our country. So having those ports of entry with technology and the ability to screen people is paramount. The role of the government is to keep our citizens safe. And it is important that that we secure the border, we get rid of the drug cartels, and we stop the flow of traffic of unwanted illegal immigrants into our country.
Thank you. Ms. Syms, your 30-second response.
Yes, thank you. No one is more sympathetic to the immigration issue than I as the daughter of an immigrant. So I understand the desire of good people wanting to come to this country for opportunity. But we are a nation of laws, and those laws have to be enforced, and unfortunately the federal government has abandoned us on this issue. As an assistant United States attorney, about 15 years ago, as a new assistant United States attorney, they handed me a pile of immigration cases and the immigration code, which was extremely complicated, and the federal government has abandoned its responsibility to reform that.
We're now, at this time, going to start into the second half of the debate, where each candidate will receive a separate question with 1 minute to respond. Remember, you may submit questions via a note card directly for a specific candidate. So if you have none, just raise your hand and they will bring it up to me. We're going to start the first question with Ms. Syms. How has your experience working in the Attorney General's office prepared you for the legislature?
Thank you. One of the great things about working in the Attorney General's office is I was able to merge my experience as an attorney with my experience as a policymaker. On the town level, I also have my master's in public administration from Harvard. So I sort of created this dream job where I was able to litigate high-profile cases, but also be involved in policies with the legislature. I'm very proud of some of the things we were able to accomplish there. One of them I hope to continue as a legislator to pursue. I made a proposal that we should have universal rape kit testing. We had thousands of rape kits on our shelves at DPS not being tested. I brought that proposal to the Attorney General and to the governor, and then the next thing I knew, the governor was talking about it in his State of the State and created the task force that we're now moving forward with the stakeholders to make that happen. So that's the kind of experience I have, the relationships I built in a number of areas that allow me to hit the ground running with my long legal career and my policy career.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, what do you offer to the residents that is unique?
What do I offer to the residents that is unique? Well, I think we're all unique in what we bring to the table, and I have, like I said earlier, I've had 3 very unique and exciting careers. I have a degree in criminal justice and social rehabilitation, and then right after that, I got into information technology. So I bring a tremendous wealth of experience in technology and how we implement that at the legislature and in just our everyday lives. And then I spent 10 years doing community activism, PTO president, working with citizens to solve problems. And then on the town council, one of the things I'm most proud of is my ability to bring all the stakeholders together and find solutions. And I know that I have made a difference in my community, and I know that I have been able to bring people together to find solutions and to build stronger communities. So that's what I bring, the ability to bring people together.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, 74% of Arizonans think we should spend more money on schools. Where would the money come from?
Oh, great question. Well, in Arizona, we are at the bottom nationally, and we need to find more money, and we need to find that money by changing our priorities. We currently give away tax breaks to all kinds of corporations and special interests. For 2 decades, we've been implementing more and more tax breaks, and it's time that we reevaluate those. We need to put the current due to be phased in tax breaks on hold until we can stabilize funding for education. You know, we keep giving, Walmart gets a tax break, and there's tax breaks for a 4-inch pipe, and there's tax breaks for if you buy a private plane, but we are last in the nation in funding. And so we need to get serious about where we can find those funds and create different priorities for our state. And when we do, when we are beginning to communicate a vision for those world-class schools that we want to have in Arizona, businesses will come here and our economy will improve. We already see businesses are not moving here because they know we don't have the educated workforce that they need. You know, we have this reputation for terribly funded schools.
Thank you. The next question for Mr. Meyer. Both candidates, Senate candidates, have served multiple terms in the House. During that time, what bill were you proudest to introduce and get passed into law?
Great question. Well, because we play political games at the Capitol, my bills don't get heard. They do not get assigned to committee. And I'd like to change that in the Senate, and that's why I'm running for the Senate. We have a historic chance to take the state in a different direction, to stop playing political games and partisan games and work to do what's right for our constituents. I've introduced bill after bill. I already talked about the sentencing reform bill that would be a good thing to do for our state. I've introduced bills on education reform, whether it is related to online education or changing requirements and improving academic achievement. So, and as a physician, I've introduced legislation to improve medical outcomes, and I can't imagine that none of my ideas merit a hearing. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee, you have the same question. Both candidates have served multiple terms in the House. During that time, what bill were you most proudest to introduce and get passed into law?
I always go back to 2012, sponsoring the legislation with Democrat emergency room doctor Matt Hines from Southern Arizona to change the option for Arizona for women seeking treatment for breast and cervical cancer. These women, the option that Arizona had set up was not a good option, and so if you were diagnosed by anyone else other than a specific provider on a list, you could not get treatment. So I changed the option. I worked with Dr. Hines to change the option to where if you go to any qualified provider, you can get treatment for breast and cervical cancer. I called the other day, over 300 women and 1 man are getting treatment under that program. That is my proudest moment, but it is not by any means the only moment. DCS and sponsoring the legislation to establish DCS as a stand-up agency was also.
Thank you. Ms. Syms, can you give us an example of any legislation that you would be willing to support that would enforce existing gun laws aimed at preventing mentally ill and criminals and domestic abusers from buying guns?
Well, I don't think that I could cite a complicated piece of legislation right now that that I would support. I'd have to look at the specifics of the legislation, but you bring up a very good point. I think that any talk of gun control or gun legislation needs to be addressed in terms of mental health. I think if you want to have a conversation about gun legislation, you need to include mental health in that discussion. That said, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I think most Arizonans do. So it's a balance, and we need good leaders to bring the stakeholders together to discuss what's possible, what are the problems presented, and what's possible. And any legislation that I would support would have to be something that had strong support from the community and that had real results that it could achieve.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, in the Center for Arizona Policy questionnaire, you stated that you oppose interpreting the U.S. Constitution in light of current times. What does that mean?
Well, I think it means that the Constitution was created by our founding fathers, and I think that there's always an effort to try to apply current ideas and trends to a Constitution that has kept us safe and free and is the most important document in our country's history. So basically what I would do is, I think what it means is that you don't take current day ideas and try to make it fit a Constitution that has been serving us well for 200 plus years.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, what is your view of the SNAP/food stamp program?
Oh, well, as I discussed earlier, the TANF program that provides food for emergency food that we have cut is part of our efforts to make sure that children aren't going hungry. And we know that 1/4 of children in Arizona are going hungry. So I think that we need to continue to allow families to qualify to receive those benefits, because it puts food on the table, and it's critical that we don't have children in our state going hungry. It affects them when they go to school. Obviously, you can't learn when you're hungry, and it affects everything, their health, their well-being. Obviously, we need to continue to offer programs like that make sense.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, why did you vote against putting the 1-cent sales tax for education on the ballot in 2010?
Good question. So I voted against putting the 1-cent sales tax on the ballot in 2010 because I think it's the legislature's job to fund our schools. We, at the time, could have done that as a legislature. I take my job seriously, and I believe that we should do our job. We pass all kinds of things along to the voters to solve and to vote on when we are elected to make those decisions. And when we don't, it sends a message to the voters that we don't want to do our job. So I feel it's important that we use, A, the money that we have in the general fund to fund our schools, and we had the opportunity at that time. At the same time we passed that 1-cent sales tax, we then turned around and cut other corporate tax cuts. So we put a regressive tax on the citizens of our district and our state. At the same time, we gave away corporate tax cuts to big corporations, and we could have just funded our schools. Thank you.
Ms. Brophy McGee, what have you done that you can point to on a concrete basis as a leader to stand up to your party and make education funding a priority?
This past session, the budget was locked and loaded, and it included some very punitive policies from the prior year's budget that I voted against, and I joined with a group of Republicans. We stood together, we fought, we put those policies on hold that would have penalized education. We got $150 million new dollars in education funding. We restored JTED funding and made that a separate bill, so it wasn't part of budget negotiations. And I worked very hard to pass Prop 123, which put $350 million into schools this year. There is a lot more work to be done to fund education, but I was able, with a group of my fellow Republicans, to make it happen this past session.
Thank you. Ms. Syms, another question, same question. In the Center for Arizona Policy questionnaire, you stated that you oppose interpreting the U.S. Constitution in light of current times. What does that mean?
Ms. Hamway gave an excellent answer on that. I believe that our Constitution is a sacred document in our country, and we should abide by it. It's worked for a very long time. I think that we have to stop trying to bootstrap, as Ms. Hamway said, current social issues into our Constitution. That's not the way the law works. We're a country of laws based on our Constitution, and we should continue to abide by it. And while I'm talking about it, I think we have too many activist judges that try to fit their own social preferences into the Constitution, and it's unworkable and inconsistent, and we need to enforce our Constitution.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, how do you suggest we update the efforts to conserve water in Arizona?
Yeah, finally an issue that I really enjoy and am passionate about. Not that I'm not passionate about all the other issues too, but so the question was, how do we conserve water? Okay. One of the things I've always felt that we make a mistake with in this state is we say we need to conserve water, but we say we also don't have a problem because we've done such a great job of managing this resource, and that is all true. But we absolutely do need to conserve water, And I've worked with the town of Paradise Valley as the water committee chair. We put in a rebate program for removing grass. I think it's really about awareness. It's about understanding that this is while it's a limited resource, and that what we do have to conserve water in order to prepare for the future. We've got lots of laws in place, and they're great, but we need to do more.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, would you support bills giving employers the right to deny coverage for birth control?
No. Women's healthcare decisions are personal, they're private. I cannot imagine how we were having a discussion about employers asking you why you would be using birth control, and it was just the strangest thing that the government should have no involvement in whatsoever. Women's healthcare choices are between them and their partner, their doctor, their faith, and there is no room for the government in making those decisions. And the fact that this bill would, we're just eroding women's rights slowly, and we're seeing that happen in all kinds of just a myriad of different ways. This is just one of them, just telling employers that on their health insurance they don't have to provide birth control when it's just medicine, and that if a woman wanted to receive it, she had to somehow go justify to her employer why she would need this medicine. That's just, it's absurd, and there's no room for the government to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, what is your position on legalizing recreational marijuana?
So when I was in medical school, I did a research project, and we looked at trauma patients that came into the ER. 50% of them had alcohol in their blood, another 30% had another drug in their blood. So some states have legalized recreational marijuana. I think we're moving too quickly. I think we need safeguards in place, particularly for our kids. In states like Colorado, I've talked to some of my medical colleagues there, and they have had cases of kids coming in, getting into their parents' recreational marijuana that's in the form of a candy or a cookie, and then they've had to be admitted to the ER and/or the hospital. So my primary job as a legislator is to make sure our kids are safe and our communities are safe, and until we can be assured of that, I won't be supportive of the measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee, do you think corporate tax breaks have any role in growing the economy?
Thank you. The corporate tax rates that I was part of, or tax breaks, that I was part of enacting as part of the 2011 budget to bring Arizona back out of the recession. I think the jury is still out. I always advocate for a look back to see whether or not those actually worked. What I will point out is that whether you're talking 4-inch pipes or corporations, that the actual corporate taxes paid are a very small percentage of the revenues that the state realizes, and that they are also highly unpredictable and can come in a lot or a little, but they are a very small percentage in comparison to the state's other forms of revenues. I also believe in keeping your word and keeping your commitment to businesses who are moving here in terms of what our tax structure looks like, and I would not be supportive of changing that.
Ms. Syms, what is one issue and solution you want to be known for?
I think education is very important to me. I want to make sure that we preserve choice in Arizona. Arizona gets an A nationally for choice. And my family is the poster family for school choice in Arizona. One size does not fit all when it comes to our children. And I have a son who went to public school. Now he's going to a private school in partnership with ASU. I have a daughter who's in a charter school, a public school here in LD28, and another daughter in a public district school. I live public schools every day, and I want to make funding them a priority because opportunity starts with our children, and we need to start addressing it in a real practical way and make sure those resources are there for them. I can't be more vested, as I said earlier, than putting my own most precious resources in our public schools. Public schools work. I could send my children to private school. I choose to send them to public school.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hamway, what is your position on raising taxes? And will you and have you raised taxes?
You know, before we raise taxes, one of the things that I think is so incredibly important is to make sure that the taxes that we already are collecting are being spent in the right way and are being used the most effectively. So, you know, as far as raising taxes, you know, that's kind of a large question. You know, would I be supportive of continuing the Prop 301 money for education and raising that from a 0.6 to a full percent? I think that's an important discussion. And have I ever raised taxes? Yes, I have raised taxes. As a council member in the town of Paradise Valley during the recession, we had a situation where we had laid off 30% of our staff and we had cut our expenses by 30%, but we had just gone into an agreement with the city of Phoenix for fire protection, and we needed a way to pay for fire service. And so we did raise our sales tax. We don't have a property tax, so yes, I have raised taxes.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, the Constitution doesn't guarantee rights to women. Would you support passing the ERA in Arizona?
Sure. You know, it's high time we give women equal treatment under the law and under the Constitution. It's strange that kind of whole movement got put on hold and was sort of stalled. I think for, you know, people my age, our mothers were fighting for that, and you know, my great-grandmother was fighting for the right to vote, and now that, you know, it's just strange that we aren't treated absolutely equally under the law, and I don't know why we wouldn't push for that.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, what is the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent?
Well, our voting records. You know, I have consistently voted to fund our schools. Arizona Schools Now, which is made up of a parent-teacher organization, school board members, teachers from across the state, just gave us a ranking on budget bills that we voted on in the 15-16 election cycle. My opponent scored 38% on that ranking, and I'll repeat that, 38%. I scored 100%. When it comes to child welfare issues, Children in Action Alliance, which is an organization that looks at bills that we vote on that impact children, also gives us a ranking, who's for kids and who's just kidding. My opponent has ranked at 67%, in 1 year scored a 0. I've gotten 100% 8 years in a row. So when we...
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee, how do you suggest we move forward with steps 4, 5, 6 towards education funding?
With the passage of Prop 123 and the eliminating or putting to bed the 5-year lawsuit, it put us in a position to begin to have those conversations. There are a number of issues that we need to start working on immediately. The renewal of Proposition 301. We have significant, severe capital needs, as the state has not funded capital and maintenance needs for the schools since 2009. In addition, we have a teacher's shortage, a teacher crisis and a teacher shortage, and we must address teacher pay and how we revitalize and recruit teachers to our schools, and they need to be good teachers. Those are some of the conversations. In addition, we need data systems between the Department of Ed and the schools that talk to each other, provide teachers real-time information, provide administrators real-time information, provide parents real-time information about how their children are actually doing, not just that, but from year to year and grade to grade. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Syms, the Federal Bureau of Prisons is halting the use of private prisons over safety and cost concerns. What is your position on Arizona doing the same?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Yes, the Federal Bureau of Prisons is halting the use of private prisons over safety and cost concerns. What's your position with Arizona doing the same?
Oh, I don't think that we're there yet. I know a lot of people like to compare spending for private prisons and spending for education. I think that that's a conversation that is not comparing the right things. Our private prisons, if you actually look at the budgeting, you'll see that private prisons are not as expensive as the state building its own prisons. So public safety is our #1 responsibility as leaders in this state. We have to make sure that we have safe and secure prisons. We do have auditing mechanisms in place in our state, and I would be in favor of our Auditor General looking at private prisons and seeing where we can increase efficiencies and where we can increase safety before we decide to follow the path of the federal government.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, in general, what is your position regarding labor unions?
Well, Arizona is a right-to-work state, and so labor unions are really a choice and by the people who, choose to join the association or the labor unions. I wish that labor unions really weren't necessary, but they are a part of our economic culture, and I think that we need to take care of our employees. Employers need to take care of their employees. And I think that, labor unions definitely raise awareness. They give people who feel disenfranchised an opportunity to come to the table and negotiate contracts. And so, they're just part of our economic culture. I support, I'm glad Arizona's a right-to-work state. We don't deal with a lot of labor unions in our state, and I think that's a positive.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, what is your view of the American dream, and what is the role of government in helping individuals achieve that dream?
Oh, gosh. Well, my view of the American dream, I think we see it every day. We see people that are able to become, whatever their potential is, be able to achieve whatever it is they want to do, whether that be, a small business owner, or a doctor, or whatever it is, to be able to access the education that they need to do that. It's what makes America great, is our individuality and our appreciation of other cultures and how we all need to work together to get to where we need to be. The role of the government in doing that is to make sure that we provide the framework that allows people to do that. We don't need government getting in the way, but we need government to be effective and to be providing opportunity through education, through, infrastructure, keeping us safe through appropriate corrections. I mean, we need government and we need it to be effective and good government.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, would you support a bill specifically protecting LGBT employees from discrimination in hiring, firing, and promotion? Why or why not?
Absolutely. We're not equal till we're all equal. And we, unfortunately, in our state have passed bills. 1062 is one of them that would allow people to discriminate against people for their religious beliefs, for their sexual orientation. And that's just wrong. The Constitution says that we are all created equal, and if people are being discriminated against in the workplace, and whether that's because of race, religion, or sexual orientation, it shouldn't be tolerated.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee, what are your thoughts on the gun show loophole, which enables firearms to be sold at gun shows without the seller having to conduct a background on the purchaser?
I think the loophole should be closed. At the same time, there has to be some recognition with our Second Amendment proponents, of which I am one, as to how we go about doing this. I think the conversation around gun rights has gotten so terribly polarized that there is no trust on either side. There is no belief that one change will not lead to another. And when given the choice, I will support Second Amendment rights over any restriction of those rights until we have a path forward that everybody can agree to.
Thank you. Ms. Syms, you cite overregulation and bureaucracy as the greatest threat to Arizona's future. Can you name specific state regulations that are harming our economy?
Thank you. I think that the small businessman is the driver of the Arizona economy. I grew up in my family's small business, in a barber shop, sweeping hair in the barber shop and learning to read on the comic books. I helped run my family business as I got older, and I saw how government regulations got in the way of the success of good people who are just trying to create some opportunity for their families, themselves, and their community. And so I think we need to take a good look, I did this at the Attorney General's office, at some of the regulations that don't deal with health and safety, that are anti-competitive, and that we can eliminate and get government out of the way so these businesses can thrive and be the drivers of our economy, generate revenue, so that we can put it into our schools for our children.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, what are your thoughts about renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro generation in Arizona?
That's a great question, too. I just got back this morning from Yuma, Arizona. I serve on the Arizona Line Siting, Power Plant and Line Siting Committee, and basically what this group does is it determines, it goes through the environmental process of whether or not we should allow power plants. And so we just did a solar generation tie-in to grow a solar farm down in Yuma. So I believe that, and it was interesting because I had never really been to one of these solar farms before, and they bring so much economic benefit to Yuma. You know, whenever you have public comment, you know, you often get pros and cons. Pretty much all the people who talked about this talked about the jobs and the economy and how important it is to that part of the country. So I'm a strong proponent in moving away from fossil fuels, doing everything we can to move towards wind and solar, and you know, just I'm a big supporter.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Butler, what are your thoughts on the recent efforts in the legislature to overhaul local city and town councils with state laws?
Oh, you know, just another strange thing from the legislature. You know, we elect our local officials. We elect school board members. We elect town council people. We elect those people to represent our values at that level. And then when the state comes in and tries to supersede their authority, I don't understand that. I think government works best when it's as accessible as possible to the people, and that means, you know, respecting the authority of local boards and commissions. And we saw that process run amok with paper or plastic bags. Gosh, there were so many strange, you know, trying to prevent minimum wage laws from going through at the city level. And really, I think it's up to those local elected officials to decide what their culture is in their city and to move forward. And be receptive to their own voters, and it is not the state's job to try and supersede that authority.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, as heroin and prescription drug overdoses continue to escalate in Arizona, what steps would you take legislatively to help combat the ongoing opioid epidemic?
Well, we have a terrible problem in Arizona with opioids. This session we passed a bill that would allow Narcan, which is the drug that reverses an overdose, to be prescribed and kept in someone's home or used so that you can reverse those overdoses. There's much more work to be done. We also passed a bill that created a database that physicians are required to use before they prescribe those prescriptions, because right now in Arizona, we're prescribing approximately 60 opiate pills per resident of the state. That's an astounding number. and that doesn't include what's coming across the border. So it has to be a multifactorial approach where we work with law enforcement, our schools, our patients, our physicians, to change the culture of drug use and abuse, and then offer treatment to those that get addicted. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee, if elected, what steps would you take to continue to diversify Arizona's economy, and what industries would you focus on?
Thank you for that question. Oof. I think the key to diversifying Arizona's economy is ensuring a world-class K-12 and university system. We have some wonderful examples in the tech industries, in the medical industries, and research industries. In addition, our universities are wonderful hubs of innovation and research. So I think my steps would be, I serve on the Flynn Foundation's Biosciences Committee. My work would be to continue along those paths and work with those organizations to grow the industries within the state that have the high quality jobs that mean our children stay here and work here. So I've taken a number of steps through my membership and various organizations, and will continue to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Syms, there's a proposal by the governor to fund 50% of the costs of the undergrad tuition at our state universities with money from the state, yet we have made no progress to move toward that goal. What is your plan, if elected, to make this happen in the up-and-coming session?
Well, I think, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part. The state undergrad, could you repeat that?
The question is, there is a proposal by the government to fund 50% of the costs of undergrad tuition at our state universities with money from the state.
Well, I think we have to look at our universities and at restoring funding. Our Constitution requires that our public universities be as free as possible, and I think we need to move toward that. We've had significant cuts to our universities. Our universities make a huge contribution to our economy. As Representative Brophy McGee just said, they are hubs of innovation, and they make a valuable contribution. Now, these cuts didn't happen overnight, and the restoration of those monies aren't going to happen overnight, and we're going to have to take a hard look at our budget, see where we can eliminate things that are redundant in our system, and reallocate our resources and make sure that we have flexibility in our education spending dollars.
Thank you. Ms. Hamway, what is your feeling or your opinion about a candidate running for legislature? Should they have prior public office experience?
Oh, I don't necessarily think so. I think that we all bring unique skills and talents to the job, and I think it's really about working with people. Are you willing to dig in? Are you willing to push up your sleeves and learn about the issues? And I think all of that comes from our life experiences. You know, I've served in the town. I've served in public office for 10 years, so I feel that that gives me an opportunity to understand how to create policy, how to work with residents, and how to build strong communities. But I don't necessarily think that it's a requirement. I think a desire to better our state, the willingness to learn, and the ability to compromise, I think, is really what makes a good legislator.
Thank you. Ms. Butler, what are your thoughts regarding increasing the state's minimum wage?
Oh, well, the initiative that will be on the ballot to increase the minimum wage, I support. You know, people in our state should not be working full-time and living in poverty, and this gets us a step closer to improving the situation. You know, it is a gradual increase, so, you know, businesses, I'm sensitive, obviously, I'm a small business owner, I'm sensitive to the needs of business, not to be, you know, receive this just big one-time hit, but it is graduated, and as we see more money going into the economy, into hands of people that are making minimum wage, they're going to spend that money on food. They're going to spend that money on tires or, you know, painting their house. They're going to spend that money in our economy. That is an investment that we should be making in Those people deserve to have, a reasonable living wage, and I think this is the first step in that direction. I'm glad to see that it also includes sick pay. You need to be able to stay home when you're sick, and I think that's a public health issue. We all want people to stay home when they're sick.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, why would an evenly split Senate benefit our state?
Well, right now, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office are all controlled by Republicans, and what that's resulted in is in massive cuts to our universities, massive cuts to our K-12 system, and special interest tax cuts that go to corporations and haven't created any jobs in our economy. The framers of the Constitution wanted us to have debate about what was best for our state and best to move forward. If we got to 15-15 in the Senate, it would give us that opportunity to have discussions and competition around ideas and where we would go and where we would lead our state. And it would give us the chance to restore funding to our schools, restore funding to our universities, and make sensible economic decisions that will actually create jobs here in Arizona. So I think there's incredible value in that, and I think we have a historic chance this election cycle to begin to take the state in a different direction, and I hope the residents of District 28 think so as well.
Thank you. Our last question for the evening to Ms. Brophy McGee. What is your position on Obamacare and repealing it?
It's a federal issue, first and foremost, so if anything happens, it needs to happen at the federal level. I supported a component of Obamacare, which was Medicaid restoration. That is something we could do here as a state, and we have done. Arizona has an amazing Medicaid program. It's a public-private partnership. It is a model, the gold standard for states throughout the country. I do not think you can repeal Obamacare on the federal level, without replacing it with other options. You can't just make it go away. You have to replace it with other options. The situation we are faced with now with Obamacare is that health insurance is far more costly, coverage is far less, premiums are higher, deductibles are higher, and the population that was supposed to be driven into Obamacare that would lift the program up hasn't.
Thank you. We will now move into our closing remarks, 1 minute each. The first closing statement will be given by Ms. Syms.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, again, for being here and for the Clean Elections for conducting this. I think that when we leave here today, if there's one thing that I hope that you know about me, is that I understand that as your elected representative, I represent you, no one else. We've run a very strong grassroots campaign, and the reason I do that is because I think there's no better guidance to a representative than the feedback we get from the people we seek to serve. And so I will continue to reach out to you folks to get your input so that we can have smart, reasonable solutions to the challenges facing Arizona. And I believe my 25-year career in private and public service as an assistant United States attorney, assistant attorney general, councilwoman will serve me and the people I represent well. I'm ready to hit the ground running for you, and I would be honored to have your vote on Election Day. Thank you so much, and I can't end without saying thank you to my husband, Mark Syms, who's here tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Hamway.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for all coming tonight. It's great to see so many people here and interested in our state and interested in what your potential leaders have to say. I am very grateful for the opportunity to run for office. I mean, it's a great opportunity to be able to do that in our state, and I have enjoyed beyond anything serving on the Paradise Valley Town Council. As I said earlier, I'm not a traditional politician. I want to solve problems. I'm about finding solutions. And if that's one thing I want you to remember about me is that I will work hard for you, I will listen, and I will take your ideas, and we will see if we can turn them into solutions that will make Arizona stronger. I would appreciate your vote and your consideration for your vote on already been through August, November the 8th. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Ms. Butler.
Well, thank you all for hanging in there with us. This has been an interesting forum to be sure. I never imagined that I would be doing this, but I could not continue to sit on the sidelines and watch what was happening to our state. And tonight we've heard about kind of more of the same policies that have gotten us here, that have left us 49th in the nation in education funding, that leave us with a quarter of our children living in poverty. We need to go in a different direction. We need to begin to achieve the balance that I think we all want to see in the legislature. I intend to work across the aisle and get things done. I'm not interested in special interests. I'm not interested in people, corporate interests. What I want to do is represent people, and I want to make sure that we fund education, that we improve the lives for hardworking Arizonans, and that's why I'm running, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Well, it's been a pleasure for me to serve for the 8 years that I've been there. I'd like to take what I've learned at the Capitol and my skills as a physician and with my underdegree in economics to the Senate to continue to work there and to work for change and for positive change, to begin to move us from 49th in per pupil funding, to begin to move us towards the national average in funding for our schools, to invest in our facilities so they aren't collapsing like the one in Glendale. And I promise, if I'm elected, to continue to do what I've always done, talk with my constituents, hear their concerns, and then address them. It is a historic moment for Arizona. We have the ability to take the state in a different direction and move beyond the last 25 years where we've neglected our schools and our children in our state, and give every one of them a chance to get a quality education in one of our public schools, to go on to get a degree in college, and then get a job right here in Arizona that they can be proud of. So I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brophy McGee.
Thank you all for coming tonight. If you care about education and you want to improve it and fund it, vote Kate, November 8th. If you want a legislature and a governor that work together, develop solutions, and solve problems, vote Kate, November 8th. If you want to ensure Arizona's most vulnerable are cared for and safe, vote Kate, November 8th. If you want your senator to be knowledgeable and informed about the problems we face, putting in the work, the research, and understanding these problems and developing solutions that everyone can agree with and vote for, vote Kate, November 8th. If you want your senator to stand up for what's right, even if it means bucking their party, vote Kate, November 8th. If you want results, not promises, vote Kate, November 8th. If you want a thoughtful problem solver, vote Kate, November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. And please join me in thanking the candidates for participating in our forum tonight. And we'd like to thank all of you for coming and taking the time to inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to visit www.azcleanelections.gov, where you can find information on the upcoming elections. And you can download the Clean Elections app and learn about the candidates running for office. A link to the video of this debate, as well as other Clean Elections debates, will post on that site within 72 hours. Please don't forget to fill out the evaluation forms. Your feedback is important to the commission and will inform us for future debates. Good night, and thank you for coming.